Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Basic Education Board.
Hello students, my name is Benon. Welcome to TV learning program. I will be taking Senior 2 students in biology. Before we start our lesson today, allow me share with you a story I read of a student who wrote about his home village. This student is called Robert. And he was trying to describe his home village. For many things he said, I understood the following. One of them, he said that his home village is made up of hills and valleys. He also said that his home village has fertile soils. It also has plants and trees which are green and make his home village very good. He talked about different animals which are common in his home village. Talked about rabbits. He talked about goats. Talked about sheep, cows. He continued talking about different animals which include dogs and cats. He said that near his home village, there is a small forest which has wild animals, and he also said that he sees insects and birds. According to the story of Robert, his home village was very nice and amazing. Dear students, I also had to ask myself about the home village of Robert as far as biology is concerned. Then I said, where can this be applied? Came to see that this can be seen in Unit 2, which is Introduction to Environmental Conservation. With this unit, we have a part of it which is 2.1, that is ecology. Dear students, as you see these different organisms seen in Robert's home village, which terms do you think are commonly used in biology and can best describe the home village of Robert? One of them is community. Another term is population. Another term is habitat. Another term is ecosystem. Another term is trophic level. Another term is carrying capacity. Apart from these terms, which other terms do you think can best describe the home village of Robert? Can you give many terms? Yes, one of them can be herbivore. Can you give another term? Another one can be omnivore. Any other term? Another one can be carnivore. Good. Now, as we continue to describe the home village of Robert, can we try to analyze these terms one by one? Let us start with the term ecology. What does it mean when you hear people talking about the term ecology? The term ecology means the scientific study of living organisms with the environment. Scientific study of the interaction between living organisms and their environment. Good. Ecology is the scientific study of the interaction between living organisms and the environment. My question is, when we say living organisms interacting with the environment, what do we mean? Let us talk about plants and animals, because we have seen this village has plants, it has trees, it also has different animals. Let us start with plants. When we say plants interacting with the environment, we can give examples. Remember, the environment has soil. And in soil, we find there mineral salts. We also find there water. Remember, plants need them. Let us say in the atmosphere we have air. We can say in the environment we have air. And remember, one of the components of air is carbon dioxide. Plants need that carbon dioxide to make their own food. In that sense, we say plants interact with the environment. Let us talk about animals and see how animals interact with environment. Remember, plants need where to live. That means they need environment. Remember, plants need where to grow crops. Animals need where to grow crops. Remember, animals need oxygen for respiration or for breathing. That means they interact with the environment. So in that process, we say organisms interacting with the environment. We learned that in ecology. According to what we see about the home village of Robert, we see that it has different animals and plants. From there, we can try to understand what the term community means. Do you understand what the term community means? The term community means organisms of different species living in the same habitat, in the same place. Take an example. When we find a place, like you see the home village of Robert has different animals, rabbits, goats, sheep, cows, and so on, living together. So that one is a very good example of a community, because in a community we find there different organisms. What does the term population mean? When we say population, we mean organisms of the same species living together. Population means organisms of the same species living together. Take an example. In the home village of Robert, when we talk about humans only, people who live there, remember, men and women are organisms of the same species. That means it is a good example of population. What does the term habitat mean? The term habitat means the place where organisms live. The place where organisms live. Take an example. The place where you live is your habitat. Habitat means the place where organisms live. Then the term ecosystem means biological community of organisms interacting with their physical environment. Biological community, biological community of organisms interacting with their physical environment. Take an example. A community is where we find different plants and animals interacting with each other. How do they interact with each other? Plants need food. They can get food from other animals. They can also get food from plants. Plants need carbon dioxide, which they get from the air. Plants need soil to get water and mineral salts. So that interaction is what we call ecosystem. And with ecosystem, we can say we have terrestrial ecosystem, and aquatic ecosystem. When we say terrestrial ecosystem, terrestrial is about land. That means ecosystem on land, plants and animals on land. Example, humans live on land. They adapted to live there. So that is terrestrial ecosystem, where we find different animals and plants living on land. Aquatic ecosystem, this aquatic is about water. Remember, in different water bodies, we find there plants and animals. So that is aquatic ecosystem. Then when we talk about the term trophic level, the word trophic is about feeding. Feeding. When you need food, it's about feedings. This one means feeding levels. We are going to see it, but it is about feeding levels. Then the term carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the ability of the given environment to accommodate organisms without straining. Ability of a given environment to accommodate organisms without straining. That means the home village of Robert has the capacity to accommodate a number of these animals and plants without any problem. That means if these animals and plants are able to get food without starving, without famine, that means carrying capacity. It means this village has the means or the capacity to accommodate those plants and animals. Then the term herbivore, who can define it, who can explain it, who can give an example. Herbivore means animals which eat plants. I repeat, herbivore means animals which eat plants. Take an example. From the animals mentioned by Robert, we can pick the ones which eat plants only. Example, cows. Cows are herbivores because they eat plants only. Goats are herbivores because they eat plants only. Sheep are herbivores because they eat plants only. Then, when we talk about omnivore, that means animals which eat both plants and other animals. Omnivore means animals which eat plants and other animals. We can take an example of Robert. It's a very good example. Robert can eat beans. Robert can eat Irish potatoes. At the same time, Robert can eat a rabbit or meat from the goat. That is omnivore. Then when we talk about carnivore, we mean animals which eat meat only. From this example, some wild animals like lion, leopard, eat meat only. They are carnivores. Are these terms clear to everyone? If they are clear, then we can go ahead and see where we can use them. Here, I have different diagrams. As you see, here we have a food chain. Here we have a food web. Do you understand the meaning of those terms? They all show how organisms depend on each other for food. Food chain, food web show how organisms depend on each other for food, but they have a slight difference. When you see the food chain, I have here trees, deer and lion. It is straight, you can see. But when you come here to the food web, you can see it is complex because it has different plants and animals depending on each other for food. So here we say a food chain is linear nutrition sequence of organisms. A food chain is the linear nutritional sequence of organisms. It shows how organisms depend on each other for food. Then in between, we have arrow. Which is like this. That arrow shows which organism eats the other. Take an example, like this. According to what I have here, it means the deer eats trees. The arrow also tells me, it also tells you that the lion eats deer. We can also say that the arrow shows the flow of energy. The arrow shows flow of energy. Do you know why they say this? It's because when you eat, you get energy. And that energy is very important because it allows you to move from one place to another. It allows your muscles to contract and relax. It allows your heart to beat. It allows your eyes to open and close. Meaning, the energy we get from food we eat is very important. That's why we say the arrow shows the flow of energy. So here I have different food chains. This is one, this is another one. We have 3 different food chains. And we can apply the other terms we have seen. You can see here we have herbivore. Herbivore means the organism which eats plant. Omnivore means the organism which eats the plant and other animals. Carnivore means the organism which eats another organism, like you see all eats mouse. Then, when it comes to food web, we say a food web is a complex food chain. It is very complex because you can see there are very many animals depending on each other for food. It becomes complex. From what we see, we have plants, then we have animals which eat plants. We also see that there are some animals which eat other animals. So this one becomes a complex food chain. From this food web, we can get very many food chains. Like, if we need to construct some of them, we can say plants, then we can say rabbit. From rabbit, we can say hawk. This is one food chain we get from this food web. We can construct another. We can say plants, mouse, snake, and then hawk. We can get as many food chains as possible. That's why we say a food web is a complex food chain. Another important point, sometimes they can ask you, what will happen if the lizard is removed from the food web? Let us say the lizard here is removed from this food web. Who can tell us what will happen? This is what will happen. The grasshopper will increase. There will become very many grasshoppers. And when grasshoppers increase, that means they need food. In that case, plants will decrease. Let us take another example. What will happen from this food chain if the deer is removed? That means this lion will not get what to eat. So in that case, it has to depend on other animals which are within that environment, or it will have to migrate and go to another place to look for food. That's why we see when there is famine or when there is no food in a given place, we see organisms migrating. Even this happens to humans. If there is no food in a given country or in a given part of a country, people move from that place which has no food and go to another place to look for food. Dear students, after discussing all this about ecology, which is the scientific study of the interaction between organisms and the environment, we see that a place which has different plants and animals is called biodiversity, where we see very many plants of different species, very many animals of different species. That place we call it biodiversity. And then when we take the small place or the environment, which is the surrounding, and we talk about the factors within that environment which affect living organisms, then that one we call it environment. I repeat, environment means the surrounding and factors within that surrounding that affect living organisms. Dear students, I have your homework here about what we have learned. I have 2 questions related with the content we have learned today. Answer them so that you can test your understanding. Thank you very much.